Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ. I am Mike Musto, and I am doing this solo today as Mr. Stoner is out. So, what's going on? Well, I'll tell you. On this episode, we've got a very special guest by the name of Jarod DeAnda. Now, for those that don't know Jarod, this man has been in the street racing drift world since the beginning, since early 95 or so. Now, not as a racer, but as a personality, as a host, as an announcer. In fact, he has been the voice of Formula Drift for going on almost 20 years. He is steeped in LA car culture, steeped in the import racing scene, and he has one of those voices that as soon as you hear, you will not forget. He is just that guy. He's a wealth of knowledge in car culture, and honestly, one of the nicest guys that you're ever going to meet in the industry. Just a gem of a person. So we're going to be back with Jarod in a few. But as always, when we start the podcast, we dive into our classifieds because we got like 25,000 cars or 30,000 cars. So the fact is, why wouldn't we start a show with looking for something that kind of represents the guest that we have on? Now, we did a little digging, and I found something that was kind of cool. It is a 1995 Toyota Supra Turbo JDM. Okay, so we're talking right-hand drive, we're talking hood scoop, we're talking kind of a little bit like Veilside style bodywork, the big massive wing on the back. And these cars, you know, the value of these cars have just skyrocketed. And, you know, as somebody who's kind of more of an American guy, I look at, you know, American car guy, I look at these cars and I get it. I get the appeal. I guess this would be the akin to, say, I don't know, a 68 Charger or something like that in the import world, right? It's just big, brash in your face, and obviously was made famous by, you know, the Fast and the Furious when that came out back in, I think, 2001. This thing is gorgeous. The price is, it's big. It's $76,995. But I mean, you know, if you're looking at like Hemi Chargers, well, you're probably talking over $100,000. So who's to judge? Probably not me. Either way, this thing is wicked. Jarod will be able to relate to this thing just because, like I said, he was there from the beginning. He knows these cars and the import scene inside and out. So stay tuned because we're going to be back with him in a few seconds. Talk to you soon. Cool. Welcome back to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. We have the one and only, probably one of the best announcers in the business, Jarod DeAnda. This is awesome.
Shucks.
Dude, I teed that up.
and I hit a ground roll double to second. Yeah, it was bad.
No, but it's true, man.
I mean, shanked it if we're talking golf.
You've been doing this. You have been an announcer for a long time. You've got one of the greatest voices in the business. And I think that very few people can kind of bring kind of the style and the enthusiasm that you bring to a microphone, dude. It's really rare these days, but you crush it every time.
I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot comes from you because you know, you have a signature sound and cadence to your voice and affinity and your brands that you've built too. So yeah, man, I thank you.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. How did you start in the announcer world? How did you get in? Did you do radio? Walk us through the process because I've always been super curious.
Yeah. Basically I grew up street racing in San Diego. So I was a big Honda guy. I was a tuner guy. So grew up street racing in San Diego. I grew up in Poway, California, down in San Diego. So I hung out with a lot of Filipino kids, to be quite honest. And in that generation, it's kind of like Gen 1 where the Honda dudes took their mom and dad's Accord, if it's a 4-door 91 Accord, if it's a, you know, Civic back then, like Hachiroku, like Corollas and stuff like that. And that we were going drag racing. So I grew up street racing, and that just perpetuated my affinity for cars and tuning. And I didn't grow up with my dad around. My parents grew up divorced fairly young. So it's not like my dad or my grandpa or my mom had a big influence automotively. It was just what I was seeing. So going to Mira Mesa, going around town, you'd see all these hooked up Civics. So that started my kind of affinity in the automotive world. 95, let's just call it 95.
Sure.
Going to high school, got a 96 Civic hatchback, and then the rest is kind of not history, but still being told. And it evolved into working at a shop, working at a shoe company called Speedwell, Modifiers Toys, working for Gumball 3000, working for Meguiar's Car Care Products, which my wife still works at. And then into 2004, where I have my peers, Ryan Sage and Jim Lau, who are co-founders of Formula Drift. They said, hey, you're charismatic. Do you want to announce this new series we're starting called Formula Drift? And I did the first year 4 events for free. And first year, rode Atlanta, Sonoma, Irwindale, and Texas. And the rest definitely for Formula Drift is history, because now here we are, 2020, 17 years of announcing Formula Drift specifically.
Wow. So I'm gonna divert back to 95. You're a big man to be in a little Civic, especially like a 95 Civic, because as a larger person.
Are you calling me Tommy Boy right now? Tommy Boy,
well,
big guy.
No, you're a tall guy, dude. You're just a
funny story. Okay, yes, I am a big dude. Love hatchbacks. Love the EG, which is the 92, 95. My EK is 96 to 99, I believe, is the years.
Okay.
But even funnier story, in addition to add to big guy and a little Civic, is that I worked at a mall called North County Fair. It's right near Lake Hodges. It's in Escondido, to be specific. And I worked at a few different stores there. Things Remembered was one of them, which you can go get engraved, glass items or plaques, right? I mean, I did all that stuff. And then I did work at Tinderbox, which is a cigar shop, like a smoke shop, right? So you get your tobacco, you get your Hummels, if you have those Hummels, or Bassons, the heads that hang in like cigar rooms and lounges. Anyways, won't bore you with the details. I had my Civic, hooked it up, had many different iterations, one of which was fully caged, one-piece carbon nose front end, or not carbon, but just fiberglass, shaved door handles, but couldn't afford the poppers. So I'd always leave my window cracked a little bit where I could reach my hand in, but living in San Diego, it rarely rained. But when it did, guess what this guy had to do? Left the keyhole on the trunk on the EK Civic hatchback, had to do military training through the roll cage to get up to my front seat. And this is all like while it's raining. So it's like that now I'm a grown man, and I look back at that, I'm like, what like that was like $100.
Right.
$100 I could have done that. Like, you know what I mean? But $100 back then, when you're in high school or just thereafter,
$100 to $100. That's right. It totally is, dude. So, dude, as somebody who was there in the Fast and the Furious when that started up, how did that happen? How did that whole, because I was on the East Coast back then, and it was like a fantasy world for us where you guys were.
That's interesting. And I would say that they made the movie Fast and Furious about what we were doing, because the scene in that early 90s, I would say early to mid 90s, just really defined what Fast and Furious was. And then it hits the big screen, and it glamorized, but also cornified some of the things we were doing, right? I need nitrous, 2 bottles, like some of those things. That's why when kids grew up watching that, they're like, what is this? I'm like, oh, they kind of blew it. It's like,
right.
It's the North Shore. Rad is still a great movie about BMX, but true BMXers are like, oh, but it was cool because the BMX riders were actually pro riders, if they're Bob Haro or whomever, right?
Right.
And then Fast and Furious, it was all our friends doing all the stunt driving. So that was kind of like, oh, okay, right on. But just on the West Coast, you had because being in San Diego, we had our own squad, our own tracks, quote unquote, from Rainbow, which is like just south of Temecula, and then all the way down to the border. San Ysidro cut over, up, down, left, right, up to Oceanside. And then once you went north of Oceanside, starts getting Orange County and Sylmar and Oxnard, you had all these pockets that had their own drag racing. So you'd have these crews, which I was part of a crew called Fusion, Team Fusion, and you'd get like LA crews coming down to San Diego, and San Diego going up there and like racing for Pink Slip. And, the vehicles were, again, Civics and 240s, which, very rare. You'd see those, but Supras, you'd see Eclipses. And dude, that was like the heyday. That's what they made Fast and Furious about. The cops would come, and there'd be 200 kids on this track. Yeah. And dude, I remember, I'm not going to glamorize it, but jumping in the car, homeboy had a cigarette, burnt my interior. I'm like, damn it. But they blocked off both ends of the street, or in like a parking lot of a Ralph's, and would start popping hoods, dude. And they'd start checking for carb stickers, illegal stuff, underage kids. It was the heyday, man. It was, again, hate to sensationalize it, but it was pretty sweet.
Oh, I can imagine. I remember the first time, when that whole thing came out, and again, being from the East Coast, we had street racing, but it was it wasn't nearly on the scope that you guys had. I mean, so for us, it really was kind of like a Hollywood production where I was like, there is
Right.
no way that there were 200 people and 200 cars at a, you know, doing this
Ralph's
stuff.
parking lot on Mira Mesa. That's literally what it was. You'd meet up. Okay, cool. Like everybody'd kind of know. And again, no cell phones, but you just
Yeah. So
follow
how did you get the
stream
word
of-
out?
You would. I don't remember. Like it would just be like, okay, you knew the again tracks. You got Upper Sorrento, Lower Sorrento, Firehouse. Again 8th Street. You
Yeah.
would have Mira Mesa. Again, all these just cool names, and you just go and cruise around. You know, Wild Animal Park right in front of the Wild
Sure.
Animal Park now so far, and you just meet up and you see people there, and it just manifested that way.
So was it always all imports, or was there like a little muscle contingency that would come down and try to break in and stuff like that?
It wasn't. You know what? It's so funny how when you're a kid, how ignorant you are. You're like, oh, dude, VTech, or if you're a musclehead guy, it's like, oh, whatever, little, Rice Rocket, and you're like, okay.
Right.
Like now you get older and you're like, game respect game. You're like, that's pretty cool. I don't care what it is. Back then you would get muscle car dudes, but it was actually, I thought it was pretty respectful. I don't remember like any times at all where you got a muscle car guy pulling up, people would be like, boo. It was like, it was a good deal, man. It was more, you'd get more of like the Honda Toyota dudes or Nissan versus Honda, or,
right.
Because back then we didn't have Subarus or Evos, mid to late 90s, because figure like early 2000s is when the Subaru RS came over, then eventually the Mitsubishi Evo. Prior was just NA, whatever.
Right. So how did that, so when all that was going on, right? Because it influenced so much stuff. It influenced fashion, it influenced car culture as a whole. You had this big import versus muscle, and then the movies came out and really kind of capitalized on that, right? And it was just this big, massive subculture of automotive personalities that was never there before, right? And again, for us, it was just a big open space. We were like, this is the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's nice. I mean, that's good just when you see from afar, because you did have like your East Coast New Yorkers that were drag racing. Like Vinny 10 notably is kind of this big Supra dude that had was it Speed Fact? I can't remember the name of the shop, but it was like downtown. I think it was like Brooklyn or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But just the whole scene was you didn't know it was a scene just because it's just what you did, and all you saw was magazines, right? So again, you only know what you know. So that's like the niche thing and drifting and where it's at and what it's progressed to. But the tuner culture back then, I don't know, man. Again, just a lot of Gen 1, Asian Americans just out there racing. That was in San Diego, because the tuner scene, they started, it was tuner, and then it became sport compact, and now, and then back then it was like drag racing and Steph Papadakis, and these names like Dave Shee and, Adam Suratari and, Ken Miyoshi, who did this event, and Frank, Choi, who did this event. It started collecting and really coagulating as far as industry. And you have somebody like RG De Vera, who's now, high up at McGuire's Car Care Products. You have certain people that have just been in the evolution, and now it's just grown because the knowledge of getting that groundswell of something early on, you kind of need to see maybe indications of what's the next trend, what's going to happen, with drifting or rallycross, or again, sport compact and tuner and that whole market. So, yeah.
So then so you go back, that's mid to late 90s that, kind of the tuner scene is coming in, but then drifting comes in. Right. And again, as an East Coast guy, that was far. When drifting came out, we were like, we've been power sliding cars and fields for the last 25, whatever, and drifting in the snow. So we're like, that's good. How did that come about? And what was that like? Like, did a light bulb go off? And then, because you went from kind of drag racing and street racing into drifting, at least that's the way that we perceived it. How did that actually happen? And I think you're one of the few that's actually been there from the beginning and saw the whole evolution of it.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely people prior to me that had an affinity for the JDM culture and just seeing what they were doing in Japan. If it's option 2, all these different magazines. The first time I remember seeing drifting, I didn't even know what it was. I was working in a shop at Group 5 Motorsports. This is mid 90s, back when I was kind of street racing. But I remember seeing a crew called Run Free, and they had the same body kits, and you had a Run Free body kit and Hachirokus and all these Toyota Corollas, either hatch or trunk. And And I didn't really know what they were doing back then. This is all the way back mid 90s. When it really came to American drifting taking off was when the Japanese came over to the States and saw an opportunity of marketing it out here. And I remember 2003, Ken Miyoshi, who did a show called Import Show Off, brought an event to drift to Irwindale and called it Drift Show Off. And he brought some Japanese drifters, Team Signal, and then had some American rally drivers like Reese Millen and Sam Houbinet back then. And they were just drifting their all-wheel drive Evos and just ripping around. And just being in the industry for as long as I had, I mean, 2020 would have been my 22nd SEMA show in a row, I think it would be.
Wow.
Or something like that. And so I've just seen these kind of groundswells, again, just of different industries. And unfortunately, import drag racing imploded because it cannibalized itself, because there were all these sanctioning bodies that were trying to make money off the same pool of drivers, and they'd shift and they'd get pulled over here, and it just imploded. And so seeing that drift show off back in 2003, I was like, dude, this is something. This is on time, because drag racing got so ridiculous and so untangible that you're like, oh my gosh, you can't relate anymore, right? That was right. The beauty of what I liked about it. Just like hot rods and muscle cars.
Sure.
I saw this opportunity, call it, not even just for me. I was kind of like, okay, I think I was still at Gumball, or I was working for McGuire's. I can't remember at that time, but I remember like, holy cow, this is something else. So because there was a show aspect, there was like this sensationalism, awesome driving, you get people involved, but also notably there was an aftermarket for it. So you had you had these older, at the time, 15-year-old vehicles that, or not even then actually, some about 10. And you saw the intakes, the exhaust, the body kits, you saw all of it, from performance to aesthetics. Drifting, that was what captured my eye. And fast forward to late 2003, the guys who currently run Formula Drift, Ryan Sage and Jim Lau, they had a company called Slipstream Global, and they helped bring D1 GP to the States, which D1 at the time, it was the premier drifting sanction body, strictly Japan, then came over to the US in 2003.
Okay, so going through that and seeing the evolution of drifting as it stands. One of the things that, and again, this is super fascinating, because it was a part of a culture that we just never had where I was. So how did that, like, one of the mysteries to me was, and it might be mystery to a lot of other people who are my age, scoring, because that was our biggest thing. We're like, all right, these two cars, like, who wins? Like, nobody, we never knew who won, because we're like, all right, they're both doing this tandem stuff and it looks really cool. But like, is it like a high diver? And like, oh, he over rotated too much, or he did this. Like, I had no concept of how the scoring worked for drifting.
So drifting, to be quite honest, similar to freestyle motocross, and I hate to say it, figure skating, because that was the early one. Like, there's figure skaters in cars, and you're like, okay, whatever. The right. evolution of tricks and the evolution of scrutinization does just that, evolve. So Formula Drift, had different scoring systems, but the spirit of it is qualifying and then head-to-head competition. So qualifying, independent runs, as it stands right now, I'll just give you like a 20/20 breakdown just for the sake of convenience. But each driver has 2 non-consecutive runs. They have a series of front clipping points and rear clipping zones. So you want to run the perfect line, So line, angle, style. Line, are you hitting all those clipping points? Angle, are you doing it as gangster as possible, minimal corrections of those front wheels? So throw it in sideways, locked and loaded, transition, bring that back end around, transition again around that front clip, okay? Qualifying. Wherever, you have 3 judges, okay? Uh-huh. And they're each allocated a criteria, line, angle, style judge. Then when it gets to game day, you have 32 vehicles. You have head-to-head battles. 1 car leads, 1 car chases. The lead car adheres to the judging criteria, trying to run the best, perfect 100-point qualifying run. Chase car needs to utilize the lead car as a moving clipping point. Wherever the lead car goes, the chase car needs to follow. Okay, so then they'll switch it up. The chase car is now lead car is chase car. They go through the course once again, line, angle, style, adhering, wrapping around, getting close, getting gangster, nice, clean, a little bobble here, check up, blah, 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 right? And then the 3 judges, driver A, driver B, or one more time. So we can go as many multiple one more times as possible to really dictate a winner. 32, 16, 8, consolation round for 3rd this particular year. Sometimes it's qualifying, and then finally the final battle. Did that make sense?
It did. And it's probably the most concise, explanation that I've ever heard. But
I have been announcing for 17 years, so I have had some practice.
So this goes to my next question. As an announcer, how much of the terminology did you come up with? So because I like, from the style to the way that the cars move back and forth, did you, Jarod, were you able to kind of define some of this stuff and has what you done kind of become part of drifting as a whole? Not just your personality, but your terminology.
Great question. And I will go on record as to say, yes, like I have created the drifting vernacular as humble as possible. I mean, I kind of brought it's kind of corny now when you use it, but it's still, there's a place for it, and send it. I brought that in, but weeble wobbles and just certain terminology. I can't think of it. If you listen to a run call, you can hear certain things, but the drift vernacular, I feel I've contributed to heavily the most of anybody in the world. I mean, 90%, 75% of it.
Yeah.
And, my peers in Europe or in New Zealand have grown up listening to me. And so I'm, I'll put a flag in the sand and just say, yeah, I did some things, I contributed, yeah, I don't know. I'm the most humble guy I know. You know what I mean?
No, but I mean, I think that's pretty amazing because, so many people they either come in middle or end. Generally, people are not there from the beginning at the genesis of an entire sport or an entire genre of vehicular racing, or however you want to define it. So for you to not only be there at the beginning, but then having been such an influence from a terminology standpoint, so that where people are, I mean, it's got to feel great if you're listening to drift events in Japan or in Europe, and all of a sudden they're repeating stuff and terminologies that you coined. That's pretty badass, dude. Like, as far as that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just trying to I don't know. Yes.
You can take credit. It's good, dude. I mean, you could totally take credit. I think a lot of people don't. And it's great that you're as humble as you are. But again, as somebody who's watched and listened, it's just really cool for guys like me to kind of know that you kind of cemented this flag, and that even, people who are just coming into drifting now, you're kind of like one of the OGs, like the original guys that were doing this stuff. And it's interesting, where I live in Northern California, we've got Sonoma Raceway, which is like 25 miles from my house. So every Wednesday night during the summer, outside of, pandemic season, we had the Wednesday night drift and drags. So you'd have guys with everything from like Chevy Love pickups and 240s and M3s would go up and just drift the shit out of everything. And, for anybody who has never been to any type of drift event, it's like a carnival ride. It is an absolute vehicular carnival ride. So it's, it's cool to kind of hear your take on it. So, but now obviously we're going into 2021. Hopefully we've dodged more bullets than we care to hope in this last 2020 year. How has the pandemic affected the sport as a whole? How has it affected you, in regards to just what you've been doing? Have you been doing stuff remotely? Can you do it? Or are you still traveling? Things like that.
Yeah. So two things. Yeah. My boy, Farouk Kawai, he actually runs the Sonoma Drift and Drags out there. So really good dude. Need to get you over there and throw you in a drift car. So I was potentially going to come out here in December, but just unable to. On that tip, I was able to, but I just I can't. But in regards to 2020, it's been a wild year, man. Yeah, we were looking forward to, I was going to do Red Bull Drift Shifters in Ireland, in Russia, in Denmark. Formula Drift is normally 8 rounds. What we did with Formula Drift is actually, I think they salvaged a great year of competition and created something that was, never done before, but a double header weekend for the pros. So normally we have 8 independent weekends. They bunched them up and did 4 double headers, which was insane because of attrition and the abuse that these vehicles take. When you go all the way to the finals, you have to, you're fighting for Sparta on Saturday as well as on Sunday. So get your armor back on yourself and fight. So yeah. And then in regards to doing things remotely, I definitely did quite a few things remotely. It's been fun, including, you and I did that Shift Talkers thing on Motor Trend.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, so now what are you seeing for 2021? Are events being scheduled now? Are people starting to kind of loosen up now that a vaccine is hopefully on the horizon, and like, is your schedule slowly filling up with more events?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I have some great partners that I worked with. Again, Formula Drift, notably this year, Hot Wheels. I did a really cool series with Hot Wheels this year.
Yeah.
And Formula Drift is, I think everybody now, there's some education and also misinformation. There's a lot of things going on, but working with the right partners and working with the right venues that are able to accommodate, because we normally take these kind of medium-sized venues, which Irwindale Speedway, I think it holds, less than 10,000, but to accommodate the 25% rule of attendance, we went to Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis. We went to, Texas Motor Speedway, where they were in the corner, which barely, populates the food stands compared to a NASCAR race. But, we like those medium-type venues. I mean, our event has packed out 10,000 plus people at Irwindale Speedway. The most people Irwindale Speedway has ever seen, because we brought in extra bleachers and stands and all that stuff. So 2021, people are just getting creative. You gotta get creative. Again, that Hot Wheels Legends tour was something that was really cool.
Yep.
I did host a lot of things with Snap-on Tools, because I've worked with them for 10 years. So things like that.
Okay, so all right, so you've done the announcer side of it. Have you driven? Did you ever try to get into drifting or become a professional driver, or just say, all right, this isn't my forte, I'm good behind the mic?
The best thing I could say is, like, these are very soft hands, and I just talk about it, and I'm not a technician. I'm not a good cook. I'm like a jack of all trades, master at none. And I'm friends with some of these. That got a really good giggle out of you, man.
That was good. Yeah, I like that.
So I'm friends with these amazing action sports athletes. If it's, Bucky Lassick and I know a lot of, Jeremy McGrath and Cole Seeley and, just these amazing athletes. And also, I've only fought twice in my life. I can't do MMA. I'm not going to do that. So all things considered, no, man, I just talk about it.
That's okay. Very, very good.
Do I legitimately have aspirations of doing it? I really don't. Like, I'm just not that competitive outside of, like, golf. Like, I'm just going to say it. I've fallen in love with golf again, because it's not just about the country clubs and all that. It's about just making rock and roll and making a hot rod out of your golf life. So anyways, yeah.
Dude, well, I mean, on your IG, you've got a lot of golf photos on there. And I have played one round of golf in my entire life. Right. And the only time I've ever played golf, I missed the ball off the tee probably 3 times. And then I hit a 260-yard drive and drove the cart for the rest of the time. So
you're the DD. It's cool.
Which is fine. Yeah. Like that's the way I would prefer.
You know your role. Your role.
Yes. So
and that's where I am at. That's where I'm like I love cars. I love driving. I like the experience. I mean, I've been to some incredible events over the years, and I've driven some amazing cars, on Gumball 3000 and stuff like that. But I don't care to, compete. I just really don't.
All right. Fair enough. So, all right, let me ask you this. We'll switch gears a little bit. So, going to, like, the rally scene, right? Because I've done back in the day, like Bull Run and all these other different rallies, and then I've done a couple legs at Gumball here and there. Do you think there's still a place for those big events? In kind of the world we're living in now, where everybody's got a camera on them and everything is, basically you can get nicked for everything. You know what I mean? Right. So what are you thinking on those?
Yeah, the whole rally, if it's Bull Run or what's the Gold Rush rally, and there's
Gold Rush, any of those.
Any of those. I mean, Gumball 3000 was the OG, and I think it's gone a different direction too. And I actually worked for Maximilian and his, at the time, wife, and because he's now since divorced, but 4 kids with her. I worked with him in 2005, and basically Gumball's the OG, and it's a bygone era. I think it is. Like you said, it's just the only ticket I ever got on Gumball was actually just outside of Vegas, and it was just dumb. It was just a dumb misunderstanding. But I did the rally 5 times, and I did London, Prague, Budapest, Croatia, Sicily, Rome, Monaco. Driving through Italy, I got pulled over because they'd never seen a bright orange General Lee Ferrari 550 Maranello Le Mans wide body. So we got pulled over and got our photos taken because they'd never seen that vehicle. I mean, it's not 2020 acceptable, but I had stars and bars on the roof. I mean, proper O1
Right.
on the doors, but we got pulled over for that. But in America, yeah, it's not going to fly too much. You know what I mean? Like, pull
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. I remember I ran Bull Run in 07, 08, and then a couple others. And, I feel like that is an era that's just gone by. I was like, I kind of feel like glad I lived through it, glad I did it,
Yeah.
but equally glad it's kind of not around anymore, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some cool like Targa trophy that I think those are more cruises. You have 3 stops during the day. You go get some apple pie and coffee, and go to Julia to do all these certain things. I'm not mocking it. I'm just saying like it was a different era, man. I was talking to my brother the other day, and I'm like, man, I remember when SatNav first came out on phones on Gumball 3000. We got these phones handed to us, and it was audio, and the 2 voices you could choose from were Burt Reynolds and Snoop Dogg. So it was like, up here, you're going to take a left, and then the Snoop Dogg's like, hey, player, up here, you're going to turn a right, like for shizzle, like, so anyways, just the technology was pretty archaic and this and that. Now, yeah, dude, you can't, again, if it's a bygone era.
Yeah, I agree. So then what do you got going on for 2021? Where, what's your January through March look like? What's your first quarter looking like?
First quarter, doing some stuff with Snap-on tools, probably getting dialed with Formula Drift, get that going. Ideally shoot some content with Harley Davidson, but I know they might not even go back, but they have new products, and I've worked with them a lot in 2019 and was looking forward to doing that. But right when COVID hit, it was like, they locked down. They can't go into Juneau Avenue, which is where the Harley Davidson U.S. headquarters, world headquarters is, I should say. And just getting creative. I got my own podcast. I'm having fun with that. I just dropped an episode. My most recent one was with Larry Chen, the photographer.
Nice.
But
Yeah,
you'll find really, Larry is incredible. You'll find a bunch of diversity as far as, guests from, Cole Seeley, Jeremy McGrath, Bucky Lassick,
cool.
Vaughn Gittin Jr., of course, Drifters, but Ken Block is on there. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Very nice.
I mean,
all right.
That's just a little taste. A lot of it just starts to manifest, and things just really, you start putting it out there. And I want to make more content and TV shows and just work with cool freaking people, man. That's what I like doing. Is I'm blessed where I get to work with my friends. I mean, again, Ryan Sage and Jim Lau, Formula Drift, they're friends. I've been to Jim's wedding. Scott Singpeel at Snap-on, thanks to him. The Hot Wheels thing came about because working with Race Service and the ID agency.
Sure.
And working with all these different people. They're all my friends. They'd be here hanging out,
Yeah, I know. I think it's, it's interesting. You if you're in this business, I think as long as we've been, right, you just, you do make friends, because the fact of the matter is what we do is fun. It's not like we're sitting in a cubicle in some office in a basement somewhere. Like, we're either driving, talking, playing with, being around the coolest people in the world. And it's a privilege to do what we do. It's a lot of fun. And I always feel bad for those people that are just like, how do you do this? And I'm like, if there was a formula for it, I'd tell you, but there isn't. It's just
right.
Kind of make it up as you go along.
A couple of my friends, obviously, and you're not going to show you only show the highlights on social media, right? I mean, you're not going to show yourself, going to the bathroom or anything like that. I don't know if we can cuss or not on here, but I won't. I'll just refrain. So basically, people are always like, dude, you're just partying all the time. I'm like, yeah, but I have, what did I say the other day? I did something with Snap-on, and I drove from Southern California out to Las Vegas, and they had me do a couple videos, and it literally took 30 minutes, and I drove out there, did it. I was like, that's it? They're like, yep. And so it basically comes down to tattoos. I got a lot of tattoos, and like there's a meme out there that says, you're not paying me for this tattoo, you're paying me for the 20 years of experience that's allows me to do this in an hour as opposed to 5.
That's correct.
So
that's right.
Your daily rate shouldn't be dictated by the quality of work that you do and how you expedite, especially voiceover. If it's an event and you crush it, that's live, it happens. Yeah. But even when my friends entrust me or I get hired to do something, like most recently, the Ford SEMA Nights special, Ford Night SEMA show special, that's what it was. And just knocked it out of the park, like as humble as possible. And they're like, man, you're great. And like, production guys like, man, that's awesome. So again, entrustment, you take your car to a good mechanic, a technician, you want it done right. If you want your show or your event or your things done right, you go to
right.
us. You go to the guys that, give a heck. Gosh
Right.
darn it.
You could say it. You could say the S word if you want to. It's okay.
Shucks.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with that. I really do. You do this a long time. Our job, your job especially, is to make it look easy, right? It's to make it look like, you do it in one take. And that's all the public needs to know. They need to know that you're capable of going out there and doing it, whereby, a lot of people, and we've all been through the kind of degradation stage where we've looked at ourselves and be like, ooh, I don't know about that one. Or, I really sucked on that one, or whatever the case is.
Tighten that one up. Yeah.
Tighten that one up, and if we don't notice it, damn well that the public is going to tell you how bad you suck, because they love that. They absolutely love to tell you that you stink, which is fine, because that makes you better. That makes me better. That makes everybody better who's in front or behind a microphone or camera, or whatever the have you. So,
yep.
But, nah, dude, this was awesome. So let me ask you this. Where can everybody find you? Give me all your social stuff. This is the time where you pimp out anything you want to, because where can everybody follow Jarod? Where could they get you?
Obviously the best, what I would say, is just IG, Instagram at Jarod DeAnda. And that's why I named my kids Parker and Tyson. I hate my first name because it's non-phonetic, but it's Jarod, last name DeAnda, DeAnda. And obviously not case sensitive, but it's got to let everybody know. So you can find me on IG, as well as you can listen to my podcast, Beer with Jarod DeAnda, but as an acronym for because everybody enjoys road runners, and you can appreciate the road runner as a car, as a vehicle, but also as a bird. And road runners are badasses. They kill snakes, and they're kind of rogue, and they adventure a lot of things. They endure, right? So road runners is a metaphor. So I got a road runner tattoo on my wrist, but so yeah, at Jarod DeAnda, you can find me on YouTube as well. I put out rarely anything. I have a fun episode on there. It's about a year old, but riding shotgun with Jarod DeAnda, and that kind of gives you a good idea about eat local, drink local, get tattooed local. That's my motto, baby.
Good. Love it. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the barbecue. It's been great as always, to talk to you. It's always a pleasure. And, for everybody out there, you got probably the best lesson in drifting and how it works from the guy who was there from the beginning, and that's probably going to be there well beyond the end. So yeah, dude, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, brother. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You got it. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.